Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Dr. Vicki Matthews will show us how to get along with anyone, anytime, at any place. Dr. Vicki, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, your book is entitled The 5 Elements of Relationships. And right at the beginning, I read where you said understanding this has actually been miraculous. Now, that's a big, important word. So can you give us some examples of what you mean by that?
Okay, so my belief from years of experience is that we get along with people better if we understand them and we understand ourselves. And to simply say you need to understand is a kind of a big kettle of fish there. So what I have done is taken the 5-element model from traditional Chinese medicine and ascribed personalities, and each of us has one dominant personality, and that is where the understanding begins. And it's much simpler than Myers-Briggs or something like that. And in that model is how each of these will get along with each other, the high points and the low points. So what I've done in my book is kind of a roadmap of understanding yourself, understanding the people in your life, and making that be part of what helps us get along better. God knows we need it.
Oh, most definitely. And just for our audience, so this is not 5 things you just picked out and said, if you have these 5 elements, things will work. This actually goes back, and I know from going through the book, hundreds, thousands of years in history, et cetera, to
Yes.
that it's been discovered, and you're bringing it forward today. Now we can use it to our advantage.
And what I'm doing is applying it to personalities and people. The 5 elements model is the basis of acupuncture and most of what goes on in traditional Chinese medicine. So it's a very active model in terms of physical healing and balance. I've simply applied it to personalities and emotional relationships.
You mentioned that one of our greatest challenges is getting along. I think you just said that. I have to ask why. You would think today we're smarter, but is it greed? Is technology doing this to us? Because it seems like if you're at a light for half a second, when the light changes, you're getting behind you.
Right.
Or people are getting angry if you're rooting for the wrong team on sports radio, talk radio. They're screaming at each other. Why is this so much now as opposed to 20 years ago?
Well, I think part of it is certainly the way the culture has evolved, and we are bigger, better, more, faster. There is a lot of discord for a variety of different reasons. We also have more freedom. We, for example, don't have to stay in a bad marriage if we don't want to. But I think the core to it is we don't understand someone. We project our needs or desires onto assuming they would want the same thing, when in fact that's not true at all. So that's why I'm the poster child for please understand yourself, and please understand the person you're relating to at whatever level, whether it's a partner, whether it's a secretary, whether it's your child's school teacher, whether it's your doctor. If you understand them, what they do will make sense, and it's much easier to get along.
Now, we think if I see someone that I don't either get along with, or I might use the word I don't like, or is not in my close circle, I might find the problem or think the problem is them. But you say it's not what we do or think, it's how people react. That almost seems too simple. It's like, yeah, if I punch you in the nose, you're going to get mad at me. Is that overly simple, or did the people years ago just figure this out ahead of us?
It is not overly simple, but I'm gonna dial it in a little bit. It's how they react, and they will react in very specific ways based on their personality. If you do something, if you set the table a certain way, somebody will be, oh, wow, great, thank you, I'm so glad you set the table. And someone that's very detailed oriented might say, wait a minute, the napkin's on the wrong side. So it really depends on the filters we look through that I call our elemental personalities, and how the person you're interacting with looks through, and can you come to a place where you understand? And I believe absolutely, yes, everybody can understand everybody, and that is what I tried to do with my book.
And that's, I really enjoyed it, and you make some great points in there, and I think people, as they're listening to the show, are going to say, wait a minute, that's going to work in my profession or in my relationships, and you'll see it within the next few minutes as we talk, because you mentioned that the energy that flows through our wiring, so to speak, our internal wiring, actually results in predictable patterns of behavior. Now, that sounds like golden information. Any salesperson, I think, just popped up and said, that's terrific. And as we talked about before the show, if there's lawyers out there who are picking a jury or want to win or make their point, bing, 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 all the bells are going off.
I've worked with lawyers, trust me.
So expand on that a little bit for us.
Okay, so as you and I were discussing earlier, this 5-element model from traditional Chinese medicine goes back millennia. It is the model that Chinese acupuncture is based on. These are rivers of energy that that bathe each of our body systems, our body organs, and that's how they use it to help us, our bodies, be physically healthy. But I have discovered through working in my practice that there are personalities associated with each of these 5 elements. The 5 elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And these personalities are they're in our energetic wiring. They're in our meridians. They're in what the Chinese use to heal the physical. And I'm using those patterns to heal relationships and our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And they interact in very predictable ways. And I'll give you a simple example. Think about water and wood. Those are 2 of the 5 elemental personalities, and we can go into what those personalities are like later. But in nature, water feeds wood. Well, trees need water to grow. So that would be like a nurturing relationship. But water puts out fire. So what's a relationship between a water personality and a fire personality going to be like? Is it doomed? No, it may feel a little challenging at first for the fire if the water is seeming to put it out, but fire people have a tendency to overdo it, to, party till dawn and then go out to breakfast and then go, shopping at the mall and just go, go, go. So having a little bit of water energy say, hey, it's time to chill out for a while can be a really important part of their life. So they're all good. It's just understanding it.
And now, of course, relationships are important because it doesn't matter what you're doing for a profession. We're all in some type of relationship, whether it's just a good friend that we have or people we enjoy being around or organizations. Can we be so-called opposites as a 20 or 25 or a 30-year-old and then start looking at the world and saying, you know what? That hasn't done me too well. I'm always teaming up or attracted to or finding a boss who's the opposite of me, and they're very organized and I'm not, so we're not getting along. Do we start to change, or would that be what you'd recommend to someone to maybe look in a little different direction?
What I'm going to say is there are no opposites. There are 5 personalities that interact in predictable ways. And they interact in either a way that is nurturing, like water feeding wood, or what in the model is called controlling, which is basically diminishing, helps to take the energy down. And that's called the controlling cycle. So that relationship is real important, the controlling cycle, and so is the nurturing cycle. And so depending on how you relate, and I'm going to use my marriage as a personal example here. I'm a wood person. Wood people like to bigger, better, more, make things happen. I joke, if you want something done, give it to a wood, they'll get it done. And they're forward thinking. So that's wood. My husband is a metal personality. Metal personalities are very detail oriented. Most lawyers have a great deal of metal personality. And they look back and say, this worked in the past. This is what we're going to do now. And this is the protocol. This is the rules, the law, the whatever. And they follow that because they honor process and protocol. So what happens in nature? Well, metal chops wood. So there are times his interactions with me feel threatening or controlling, and they probably are. But for me, that can be a really good thing because I can be out. I mean, I'm the person that got up the day after Christmas and said, let's knock this wall out in our house. And my husband's like, the Christmas tree is up. There'll be dust everywhere. Maybe we should wait a couple days. And he was 100% correct. So it's always good, no matter whether you have a nurturing relationship connection on that model or controlling. But you have to understand it. If I didn't understand that dynamic between myself and my husband, we would probably be divorced.
And I think that's a great point that you make, because what you say isn't necessarily wrong. It might have been a great idea. Maybe you did eventually knock that wall down, but the day after Christmas might be a little soon to do it because of everything that's going on and the way the world.
And that's exactly what happened, is we waited 2 weeks and we knocked the wall down.
And everybody was probably relatively happy with it.
Right. I mean, I might have been a teeny bit miffed the second he said no. But the minute he gave his reasoning, I saw the wisdom in what he was saying, because metal people are very wise. They've seen it all. And he was right.
You're very understanding, so it makes it even better. And hopefully a lot of us will be that way after we listen to the rest of the show and get hold of your book and look at it. But Dr. Vicki, at this point, I just want to remind our audience, if you're just tuning in and loving what you're hearing, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Dr. Vicki Matthews. Her book is The 5 Elements of Relationships, and I suggest you write that down, because tomorrow you're going to be saying, what was the name of that book? It really was good. She had a lot of great ideas. The person we're talking about, Dr. Vicki Matthews, it does have a lot of great ideas, and she's going to tell us where we can get the book and a website where we can learn more.
The book is available on Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble. And my website is drvickimatthews.com. That's drvickimatthews.com.
And again, for our audience, they probably know this by now if they're regular listeners, but if you only got a part of the show, or you didn't get to write everything down, or you want to hear it again, you can go to nccradio.org. That's nccradio.org, and listen to the podcast of the show, and you can recommend it. Your friends or relatives anywhere in the world, any time of day, can listen to it at their convenience, and then you'll get along with everybody, because they'll all know this important information. Dr. Vicki, let me ask you, we hear the word controlling a lot today. The husband was too controlling. The wife my boss is too controlling. He wants to know everything I'm doing. How would we match up with a person like that, or would we just either get a divorce or a new job? Okay,
well, again, not to sound like a broken record, but my experience and the experience of my patients who I've worked with for decades using this material is that if you can understand why it feels controlling to you, you can change your behavior. You can point out in a civilized way that their behavior isn't working for you and settle it that way, rather than instantly reacting in a negative way and things escalate from that. And my experience has been, if we can take a deep breath and go, why is this bothering me? And again, I use my model all the time in my practice with my patients, and they come to understand why something isn't the way they want it to be, and they can work with it. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, I had a man come into my practice, and he wanted to talk about the fact that he had been a college football star, and his kid didn't want to play football, his 9 or 10-year-old son. And he said, I'm raising a wimpy kid. How do I get him not to be such a wimp? The reality is, the child was not wired to play football. He was the dad was a wood, make it happen, go out there, kick the ball, kick the people, whatever type of person. He was very successful. The kid was a water personality, which is quiet. They like reading. They like art. Imagination sits in the water element. He was a creative. He was a creative person. He was not an athlete. And when I could explain this to the dad, and he watched his child's behavior, and he said, you're right. I mean, you've really nailed him. You've explained him to a T. And he came to accept that his son wasn't wired to be like him. So he got the kid a camera, which is what the kid wanted. And today that kid's a professional photographer.
And I would imagine the father and son have a much better relationship.
Oh my gosh, yes. They were like two peas in a pod. It was, but the father had to understand, we can do lots of things together, but it's not going to be play football, which I'm really good at and he isn't. So instead, he bought them both cameras, and they did photo shoots together out in nature, hiking, and they had and continue to have a great relationship.
Well, we have to say hats off to the father on that one, because
Right.
he really did save what could have been a difficult situation or an awkward one, at least for a period of time in the child's life and the father's life too, I guess.
But kudos to him for taking the time to understand his child. The child's going to be the way the child is wired. He's going to have the personality he came in with.
And I guess, as you said, it's how we react.
Yes.
And if we're aiming to just change the other person, they may want to. They may change with us for a variety of reasons, promotion, moving up the ladder, or to move on to another job or relationship. But it's our reaction that's going to be important. Now, in your book, and we hear this a lot on the comedy shows, you talk about yin and yang. What is that? Is that two little guys who are pulling us on each direction, or what is that really about? How does that relate?
That also goes back to ancient Chinese teachings. And the Chinese were very good observers. They observed the weather patterns, they observed day and night, they observed cycles. And that's really all the 5 elements model is a cycle going through the seasons from winter to spring to summer to fall type of thing. Yin and yang is the short-term cycle between light and dark. Basically, nighttime when it's dark is yin. Daytime when it's light is yang. And yin energies are inner directed, are inner focused, and yang energies are outer directed and outer focused. So you can then project that onto almost anything you want. You can project it onto personalities. People that are outgoing and fun might be more yang type people. People that are quiet and inner directed, that like to talk philosophy or things like that, might be what you would call yin, more yin or inner directed. And those tie into the 5 element personalities, because there is a yin version of each of the personalities and a yang version of each of the personalities.
Oh, okay. So each one would connect up with the personalities. So they would be, it's like, I guess, right-handed and left-handed.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good example.
I get some points for that one. Okay.
You do. That was a good one.
Now, once we, I guess, figure out who we are, and we're going to ask you what the different elements, just in a general conversation would lead to. How do you start off people if they were to come into, I guess, either to you for personal mentoring or a seminar? Where would you start? Do they figure it out, or do you ask them 3 magical questions or 10 and say,
even
okay,
better.
You're a water, you're a
no,
earth?
Even better. Remember, we're all 5. We have all 5 of these stacked up, and what we call our primary elemental personality is the one closest to us in our energetic field, kind of like looking through a window with a tint on it that colors how we look at the whole world. And the easiest way to determine how those 5 stack up, what your first, primary, second, third, fourth, fifth, is to take my quiz, which is on my website.
Okay. So, and now let me ask you, and for our audience, we're going to ask you about the website, and you'll give it to us in a few minutes. But once we get that, is that a long quiz, or how many questions, basically?
20.
Oh, okay.
It's short.
So it's
short. Also in the book. It's in the back of the book.
And we're going to know after that which one of the elements we would probably fit into the best.
Like it's a point scale. So whichever you get the highest number of points in is your primary. Second highest will be your secondary. Third highest number of points is your third, all down to your fourth and your fifth.
Are people shocked when they take the test and say, wow, I wouldn't have thought I'm a metal. I would think I'm a water or earth.
Right. But if they think about it and read the descriptions, I have never, and I've used this quiz for years, I've never had anyone say it's just blatantly wrong. I've had them say, wow, I've been denying that part of myself because I thought it wasn't cool. Or, wow, I can see where my divorce took that part out of me. It wasn't safe to do anymore. I've never had anyone say, that's just not me.
And I copied a statement down from your book because it's so true. And to our audience, even if you're doubting this a little bit, I would suggest look into it and make your own decision. Because Dr. Vicki had a statement in the book, and I took it out as a quote, "This is better than hoping things will change on their own. Here you're doing something for yourself. You're acknowledging which group you might fit in. If you're right-handed and trying to do everything left-handed, it's going to be much more difficult and harder for you, and it's just not going to fit. And if you're that scientific person and trying to be a dance instructor, maybe that's not going to work because you're not into music, but give you science and chemicals and all the things scientists work with, you might be very happy. So just knowing this might make your life a lot easier. I think it would. And as you said, it's a lot better than just hoping things are going to change if you're talking about you and your boss or you and your spouse or the children. And as you said, with that football player and his son, they're a lot happier now than the two who don't get along for years because the son isn't playing a game he hates and he'd be miserable in life.
Another thing too, in hiring people for companies, if let's talk about sales, you need a certain personality to be good at sales. Don't hire a water personality. They're not going to be outgoing and engaging and any of the things that make for a good salesperson. I mean, hire a fire, hire a wood, people that are out there to make a connection and quick on their feet and engaging. So, it's really, when you understand the 5 different personalities, it's really can make a difference in how you approach almost everybody in your life, whether they're family members or in business or you're talking to a jury. I mean, if you're a lawyer and you're trying to get somebody off of what would be called a domestic issue, if the person involved is going to be caring and compassionate, I mean, a juror, you want a juror that's going to be caring and compassionate. Those are the earth energy people. And home is important to them. Children are important to them. Food is important to them. So you would want people that would value home on your jury to support what you're looking for.
I think it's great what you're telling us, because we probably never put it in these kind of categories. And now that we're thinking of it and saying, hey, wait, if I can waste time hiring people willy-nilly, but if I'm hiring them with the right elements, first of all, it's going to avoid letting people go and going through the process again and again, but it's also going to make me and the company and the organization a lot more money, and people are going to say, wow, you're really smart, Bill, because you're hiring all the right people. You're due for a promotion. So it's a win-win. And if it's the lawyer, the jury.
And it's a win-win for the people you're hiring, because if you hire someone that isn't right for the position, even though they look right on paper, but their personality isn't going to have the staying power you want, that's expensive. Whereas if you can hire the right person to begin with, that's going to be a good fit for the requirements of the position, they have a much better likelihood of being a long-term employee.
Dr. Vicki, once again, I'm sure people listening are going, wait, who is this person? What's she talking about? Well, today you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, but the person with all these amazing ideas is Dr. Vicki Matthews. That's VICKIMATTHEWS. Her book is The 5 Elements of Relationships, How to Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Any Place. And we're going to ask Dr. Vicki again where we can get the book and if there's a website.
Thank you. You may get the book on Amazon, and it's also available at Barnes & Noble. And my website is drvickimatthews.com. That's drvickimatthews.com. And the quiz we were just talking about is on that website.
And I think that's perfect. Just for fun, take the quiz and see, are you the person you thought you are? Or maybe you're a little more left-handed or right-handed, to use an example of what you think. And maybe that's going to help with the job or the relationships or just convincing that jury to go your way. By the way, as we said before, if you are interested in hearing this show again, you can listen to nccradio.org. That's nccradio.org. Our podcasts are on there. Go to Secrets of Success and then look for Dr. Vicki Matthews, The 5 Elements of Relationships. You can listen to it at your convenience, take notes, and go to the website and take that test and see which element matches up with you. Dr. Vicki, what do you find when you work with people? Is there either a problem area, a bump in the road that they have trouble getting over, or is there something they're amazed at and say, oh, that won't work for me because I'm the boss and the people have to do what I say? Where do you find that there's either confusion or conflict?
I would say I did a lot of relationship counseling, a lot of marriage counseling, or just even friendship counseling. And the biggest confusion was the belief that everybody's wired the same. So if one person A was looking at person B through the filter of what they think is the right way to do something or what their preferences are, what they're good at. Well, if I'm good at it, why can't she be good at it? Or why can't he be good at it? It's not understanding that we're each going to be wired in very specific ways that are not necessarily identical. So I think that more than anything, I think projecting ourselves onto someone else before we take the time to understand them and what they're good at. I mean, each of those 5 elemental personalities are really good at things. They're really not good at certain other things. They have very specific deep needs. Their stress behaviors will manifest very differently. What matters to them, priorities in life will be different. What they love and what they hate will be different. I mean, it's very different. I mean, it's surprising how different we are, even though we think we're all the same.
And I'm a numbers person, and I know a lot of times I'll say something, and if the numbers make sense to me, that should make sense to everybody. But right. I'm also learning that that's not necessarily true.
That's not necessarily true.
I don't care if that's the cheapest pair of socks. I want the better socks or
exactly.
the better car. And to me, why do you need the better car? This car is still going to take you where you're going.
And that's a wonderfully pragmatic approach. And to some personalities, it doesn't matter. That's not a priority for them. I mean, that's why it's important to understand what matters. I mean, you can talk about what matters to water personalities versus what matters to wood or fire or earth or metal personalities. They're going to be really different.
Now, what happens when we get into stressful situations? Everything is nice when we meet somebody. They're pretty, they're handsome. We like our boss because he or she said we're going to be rich if we take this position, or we're going to move up the line. But when we get into the day-to-day, there's always some stress and some conflicts going on. Do things get better? Do they get worse? Do we change? Do the waters trade teams?
Wouldn't we love it if things got better when we were stressed? No, they're not going to get better because we have associated with each of the personalities, we have stress behaviors. For example, water personalities, when they're really stressed, they'll become fearful, hopeless, they get narcissistic, intolerant. A wood personality, who is supposed to be, the make it happen person, can all of a sudden become very indecisive when they're stressed. They can get frustrated, impatient. Anger is a sure sign of a stressed wood. Fire, when they get stressed, they, instead of being, here, let's all go party and have fun, suddenly they're scattered, they're anxious, they get panicked easy. This is a sign of a stressed fire personality. Earth personalities, they need people to feel, they like to be in families and groups of good friends and all. But when they're stressed, they get needy, clingy, metally, and they get very worried. They worry about everything. And metals, when they're stressed, normally they're precise and everything goes the way the rule book says. You follow the recipe, all that. Metals can get very critical. They can get confused, very inflexible, and really super controlling. So we all have places we go when we're stressed.
You've been telling us, and I think that's really good there. What is a typical mistake someone will make in 10 seconds? Can you tell us, is there one mistake that 60 or 70% of the people who come to you will make on the first day that they're getting into this?
I would say the most common mistake is making the assumption that the people you love, that you're close to, will want the same thing you want. They will not.
No, I think that's very good. And from what I read of your book, I think that's right on. And I think we're all going to learn a lot of lessons from the 5 elements of relationships by our guest, Dr. Vicki Matthews. And Dr. Vicki, once again, I'd ask you to give us that website.
My website is drvickimatthews.com. That's drvickimatthews.com.
Do yourself a favor. Go take a look at this. It can't hurt. And as Dr. Vicki said, it's better than hoping things are going to change or work out. And this might be just that magic potion you need to make that relationship work, make that job better, or shoot to the top of your profession if you're in law, sales, or that teacher who wants everyone in the class to learn. Dr. Vicki, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been a joy.
To our audience, you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.